On the floor to my right was a makeshift bed, surrounded by alien-looking orange glass. I picked a piece of glass up, examined it briefly and placed it in my satchel. Turning 180 degrees to see where I had just come from, I saw the carved face in its finely detailed glory. It wasn't apparent earlier, as I was stood too close to the carving to allow its features to clearly display exactly who it was intending to represent. Now, from this distance, it was an exact likeness of a person especially familiar to me. Am I being watched? It certainly feels like it. Wishful thinking, perhaps? That way I am not alone. Clearly there are people here. But where? Elevation is key here. A high vantage point will illuminate the current dark cloud I'm under. My name is Twelvel. I am a subject of planet Earth. I sailed here with my now stony friend Hennessy. My name is Twelvel. It's becoming increasingly difficult to get the image of Hennessy's carved face out of my mind. It can't be a coincidence, and yet it must be. But it cannot be. I dreamed again last night, dancing with a bear, him wearing full military fatigues with 3 chevrons for a moustache. Sergeant Bear. While we danced, a floor of snakes appeared, yet they continued to dance. As the snakes disappeared, they respawned as jellyfish, which caused the waltzing duo to slip and fall. Owing to the bear leading the dance, it fell on me and swallowed me whole. That feeling of paranoia has reared its ugly head today. For the entire duration of my climb up to this vantage point, I could feel eyes on me, following me as I walked, watching with some frenzied energy, studying, stalking, hunting. After rereading my latest entry, I thought it best to arm myself. After all, there's many a strange thing going on, and not wanting to be on the pointy end of a ritualistic anything, arm myself I did. By fashioning a spear from a fresh sapling, splitting one end and sliding a piece of stone very similar in appearance to slate, of which yours truly has spent what seemed like an eon sharpening to any sort of beast-piercing point, then securing the blade into position with the drawstring from my jacket, I now hold the appearance of a 1-week-old bearded caveman who shops at H&M, rugged and thrifty. It seems a safe and wise idea to head higher still and begin mapping this place from up high. The mountain behind me should provide three blasted. How many degrees in a circle? Ah yes, 365. 365 degrees from the mountaintop mapping the godforsaken, lonely, eerie place shall be a challenge, yet nevertheless imperative. Before returning to the forest to forage for more tubers and fruit, an idea struck. Perhaps I could find some bottles to fill with stream water for my mountain trek. Assuming there will be more streams up there isn't enough to quell my fear of drying out. I struck gold, however. Liquid gold. Single malt scotch. Whiskey. Even if it tastes like fiery disinfectant, at least I can rub it on and keep the fierce flies off. My bag is packed full and tight. 5 potatoes, 5 fruits, 4 green glass bottles of water, 1 very special whiskey, 1 large piece of simple fishing net pilfered from a dilapidated boat on the cove. Estimating a good 2 long days' walk to the top, I fear I shall not ride for a while. However, those eyes I'm sure are still on me. After much arduous walking and a very incorrect 2-day climb estimation, now, 4 days later, sat at the top of this mountain, looking down on the very inn where I found the very same whiskey I am now drinking in a very private congratulation, the whole island is spread beneath my feet. A glorious spectacle. A horseshoe of mountains to my right which descend in height as they reach closer to the watery edge of the island. A haze of smoke rising up from the far end, from what I presume to be a massive waterfall. Dead ahead I see the cove in which the port we arrived in is located. In between the port and yours truly lies the enormous, dark lake it took close to 2 full days to walk its length on the way up here. I took shelter on its sandy banks when the sun was at its highest, and oh, what a day. Using the sun's convenient position and a piece of broken bottle I had foolishly smashed in my bag as I tripped on a tree root and stumbled to the floor, as the light was focused and a concentrated beam of sunlight hit the dried moss on a thin, tinder-dried tree branch, the smell of smoke it produced warmed my heart and drove my morale back to something human-like. Once a fire was established, having stacked plenty of dead wood on top to keep her burning, I sat back and watched it burn. The dry heat on my face was comforting, even in the high sun's heat. Watching as the smoke spiraled and the flames twisted, a primeval feeling of deep self-gratification came over me. I hadn't felt this alive since, well, I can't remember. Once the caveman phase had passed, hunger took over and stayed. After digging into the lake's banks and finding a handful of bright red worms, removing my shoes and stepping into the cool, crystal-clear water, I placed a single red worm in the water, and even before the creature had reached the bottom, a brilliant blue fish the size of a good trout snaffled it. Gone. After returning to my satchel and retrieving the netting pilfered from the abandoned boat, moored in the abandoned port, in the abandoned town, in the abandoned... you get the picture. Submerging the net and throwing a couple of worms on top, within seconds 2 blue trout were snared and destined for one place only. After my compulsory taste tests, of course. 2 sharpened sticks later, and my fish were cooking away nicely. "When the eyes are white, your fish is right," my grandmother said. Or was it my grandfather? I forget now. While the fish were cooking, my feet were wet once more, and a successful haul of 4 more fish would serve as my breakfast. Later I dined on fresh blue fish, washed down with an ethereal helping of whiskey. Drifting off on the most comfortable bed of sand, feeling completely at ease, sated and safe, it was still full light, but reckoned I'd sleep until at least dawn. I wasn't wrong. After waking well after sunrise, breakfast was finished and feeling mostly refreshed and relieved after a morning dip in the lake, only mostly refreshed owing to the lack of a good shave, the journey to the summit continued. Upon approach to the lakeside shore, I stopped instantly upon seeing a creature scavenging the remains of my blue trout breakfast. It had a similar appearance to that of a very small pig, about the size of a hare, and a hairy mottled brown colour to match. Whilst relishing in the sight of another mammal, I became aware of movement in the long grass behind the hare-pig. I instinctively dropped to my knees, and the splashing sound disturbed the creature and it made off. Not getting very far, however, as in a flash, the hare-pig was clearly dead and in the mouth of a large cat-like creature. The cat turned and seemed startled to see me knelt in the water only 20 yards away. So startled she dropped the hare-pig and took a long, studious look at me, and me at it, then turned without breaking its gaze and trotted off, head held high and proud back into the woods. Even kneeling in the rippling water, frozen in fear, my first thought was on the fresh hare-pig carcass being in my belly. Getting back to my feet and standing for a few moments, watching for any other natural wonders, the coast seemed clear, if you'll pardon the pun. From here on in, my spear will be in or close to my hand. I do not fancy running into a big cat any time soon. Although not the largest cat specimen to my knowledge, I'm sure she could dish out a good fight. Now, atop this mountain, looking down on the vista before me, I again sense that someone is watching. Or maybe something watching. Studying. Waiting. Even if it is the big cat, it would be a weight off my mind. Something catches the eye, over the opposite side of the water. It appears to be coming from under the water. A bright orange sheen on the lake. Quite certain I wasn't aware of this when I was by the water. Sitting and observing a short while longer, curiosity got the better of me. Being the born inquisitive type, and cursing the lack of any binoscopic device, after taking a detailed sketch of the island, it was time to make my descent and investigate the strange light source. Stunned. Stunned. Utterly stunned. On returning to the water's edge, it became apparent, immediately apparent, that the orange glow was not a trick of the light. The water, Being so clear, I could dive down and see as clear as day the most fascinating artifact I've ever set my eyes upon. Nestled on a raised platform, cut perfectly triangular from the bedrock, a good 10 feet under the surface of the water. Attempting to bring it to the surface proved impossible. It was not attached to the lake's bottom. It appears to be made of crystal, a box measuring 2 feet by 1 feet, rectangular in shape, and inside a scepter which strikes a rather definite and deafening bell. But for the life of me, I cannot think where from. The most striking feature of this relic, however, is the clarity of the light it emits. And what in the blue levels of Hades is powering the light? After too many failed attempts to breach the box, deciding to take a break and regroup my plans, I sat, semi-naked, on the sandy shores once more and allowed the sun to dry me off. Once again, after drifting off and awaking from a rather nostalgic dream of home, dusk was making quite a name for itself, and darkness was quickly settling in for the night. On hearing the excited chatter of voices, fellow human voices I had craved to hear for so long, I reckoned by now I would jump and make towards them with much gusto. But no. Solitude had clearly brought the worst out in me, and with the spear in hand, I beat a hasty albeit quiet retreat into the dense foliage of the forest shadowing the length of the lake. It was the old woman from the crypt. But that was a dream, wasn't it? Those words again, I'd heard them before. Bushul donata. And the light again, brilliant orange, flooded the sky. Again. Is this déjà vu? I'm sure I dreamed this. Where did I see this damn charade before? Any questions I had were put on hold as I witnessed the most mind-bending spectacle of my entire life. What I remember of my life, I remember sailing on a boat with my friend... Hen? Chicken? Strike a light, I don't remember my friend's name. What were we sailing for? I remember speaking. The light. The orange light. The scorched sand. The sand! The sand beneath the old woman is smoking, starting to pool and eddy in miniature swirls of molten rock, absorbing foreign particles in the sand. For them to feel the intensity of the glow, those words again. Bushul donata. The artifact I tried in vain to lift from the water, now suspended inches from the old woman's mask, defying gravity, forcing me to question what little grip I have remaining on reality, came to rest on the fiery beach. Each of the masked onlookers raised their arms in a V, in a clear act of praise for their beloved antiquity. Bushul donata, dinastova. They bellowed in unison. The old woman, oblivious to the fire on which she was treading with bare soles, reached down, bones cracking as she bent, and grasped the relic secured by ornate clasps inside the clear crystal box. With an audible click, the scepter came free of its submersive sarcophagus and was held aloft. Came the gibberish again, this time in the form of a single decrepit voice. What is this ritual? With each utterance, the light intensified and the people became more transfixed until ultimately entranced. A perfect silence fell over the entire area, and the temperature dropped dramatically, and with that, the red-hot sand instantly cooled. The silence broken by the crackling of fugalites forming. Just as the stillness and quiet became the only noise, I found myself moving towards the scepter, completely, unconsciously, as if in a dream, trying with all my might and conscious strength to claw my way back to my prone position of safety in the undergrowth. I quickly became aware that I, a man of science, had become ensnared with the orange light's magical hypnotic grip.